Welcome. This session is being recorded. Welcome to the Wayne County Office of Economic Development and Planning Business Panel Series. This is our second quarterly business panel webinar focused on topics of interest to our colleagues and our business community. In February, we hosted a woman-owned business panel with 4 local women entrepreneurs who provided information to the audience about the New York State Women and Minority Business Enterprise certification process. We do have that webinar recorded as well if people are interested. But today we're going to be talking about housing issues, different programs and initiatives that we have here in Wayne County, and the seminar will be about 90 minutes today, and like I said, it will be recorded. Obviously, you see our panelists on the screen with our moderator. They're going to share information about their agencies and the different programs that they run and introduce themselves. Members of the audience will be able to see and hear our panelists, but will not have the option to be seen or heard until the end during a Q&A, but you can use your chat function or your raise hand function to ask questions. And to lead our conversation will be Brian Pinchelli, the Director of Economic Development and Planning. So Brian.
Deb, thank you very much. I appreciate everyone taking the time to be here at 8:30 on a Friday morning. I'm sure everyone has a lot of things going on given the start of summer, but appreciate everyone taking the time to be here. So as Deb said, you know, we're the Economic Development and Planning Department for Wayne County. We are not specifically focused on housing, but as you can imagine, housing has an impact on all of the work that we do here. And it's been a pretty big topic of conversation. We've taken some steps along the way since I joined the county in 2017, and very quickly learned that there were some immediate issues that needed to be addressed, and we have some partners here to elaborate on some of that. But we started off doing a derelict property study in an effort to try to address, if you will, the worst of the worst, and addressing some of the issues that the county's been struggling with. And since then have been building on studies and programs looking to address not only, if you will, the derelict properties or the trouble sites that we have, but helping address and look at issues across the county, across the entire market, and trying to do what we can to help either address issues or facilitate growth or expansion or other things that help with all the things that we do here. So we have a great panel this morning. Really looking forward to the discussion. As Deb said, we'll give everyone a chance to introduce themselves, elaborate a little about their agencies and what they do. Then we'll dive into some questions and have a conversation about where things are going and other efforts across the county and across the region. So with that, I'll start with Thomas Lyon. Thomas, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and telling everybody a little about what we're doing and efforts that we've taken and steps we've taken to date, that would be great.
Okay, yeah, I'm Thomas Lyon. I'm a planner here in the Office of Economic Development and Planning. As Brian kind of mentioned, you know, our office has been kind of indirectly involved in the housing efforts, just kind of reviewing site plans and subdivisions all along. But our program started kind of in earnest with the derelict property study back in 2018. But prior to that, there hadn't really been any sort of study of anything as far as housing since about 1995. And so the derelict property study kind of got us moving, seeing some of where there might be the largest struggle. And then in 2019, 2020, we did get a grant through enterprise partnership in the AG's office to do a study of affordable rental housing in the county. So that gave us, again, another sliver of where the housing needs are and where the housing opportunities are. And we are currently just starting into, we have a grant to look at sort of a more comprehensive housing study to kind of put several of the pieces together and really see where we're at. As I mentioned, our office is kind of indirectly involved in the housing market, just basically looking at, as plans come into the county. And what we're seeing, there's kind of the onesies, twosies, a subdivision of an existing property to build a new house all throughout the county. But we're seeing the largest subdivisions, things like that happening mostly on the west side of the county, mostly, a lot of them on kind of the green field outside of the village center, which raises all sorts of questions about getting infrastructure out there and the effects on our agriculture. But we're starting to dip our toe in, and some of the other panelists here have been great partners in trying to help us formulate how we're going to address housing in Wayne County.
Great. Well, we'll have a chance to elaborate on all that in a little bit, Thomas. Speaking of partners, we've got Mark Humbert here, the director of our county land bank. I'm not sure if folks even know what land banks are, but Mark's been a great partner in a lot of the efforts we've been doing, especially on the derelict property side. But I'll give Mark an opportunity to introduce himself and elaborate a little on the efforts of the land bank. Mark?
Sure. Great to be with you today. I saw the list of people that were going to be on here today, and many of you I know, certainly many of your agencies I know. And over time, I think as I look through the list, we're going to be working a lot more with all of you, and plus many more. I came, the land bank's been here since about 2018. Brian, when he came on as economic development and planning the director, he brought the land bank in with the board of supervisors, and it was created to deal with the derelict properties that they'd identified in the derelict property study. And so when I first took this position to get things up and rolling, just to let you know, I'm a retired SUNY guy. I took that hat off a few years ago. I'd call myself a lifetime resident of the county. My family's been here forever. My dad was in Eastern New York for a while, so I graduated. I didn't graduate from here, but spent my whole life here. Family's here, committed to this place. So I was really passionate about what could I do in the next chapter of my life to help Wayne County and make a difference here as opposed to somewhere else. So anyway, this opportunity came up, and the first time I met with the board of directors, we had 4 properties, as I recall, Brian, that we wanted to demolish. And I said, okay, so what do we do after lunch? So it's been a very interesting ride, and certainly I'll try to give you the Cliff's Note version. We started out with demolishing properties that the land bank had received in foreclosure from the county through the tax foreclosure process, and those properties had exhausted their useful life. They were done. Over the last 3 years, of course, COVID kind of threw a monkey wrench into the same and everything. Things have evolved a little bit. We've gotten some properties from the county that didn't necessarily need to be demolished. We're in a position where maybe with some TLC and some expectations, those properties could still be redeveloped, reused. And so we have done some of that work, but not as much as we hope to in the future. At this point, our focus has primarily been demolitions of existing derelict bad stuff. Done a lot in the brownfield arena. Again, Brian's area and his group over there has done a fantastic job getting brownfield grant money from EPA, and so we're doing a lot of environmental testing. A lot of the properties, many of you would be surprised by this. There were, goodness, Brian, I think there were about 40 or 45 properties that the county had just put into a non-taxable status because we didn't know what to do with them. These were environmentally challenged properties, old gas stations, houses with asbestos, those kinds of things. And so now any property we can clean off that list we have done, and then they're back on the tax rolls, or they're in the land bank right now and we're dealing with them. So the scope of our work has certainly expanded, and I see it, you know, with groups like this, you're always following the money, right? We're all following the money. As a farmer, I'm following the money. So right now the money is in housing. There's just a lot of money. There's money that's been allocated in the state budget for land banks, for affordable housing. And so where I see the land bank moving forward, and we can get into the details of what I'm doing as you have questions, but really facilitating some of the conversations, some of the activities related to getting properties, getting them either removed or fixed up. I'd like to believe we're changing the conversations. I was in a conversation with a couple of people the other day who are interested in some of our properties, and they said, well, you know, we should be able to just get by with doing this, right? And I said, oh no, that's not how that works in Wayne County. I said, you know, we're going to give you a list of things to do, and you're going to have 6 months to do them. And yeah, but other places don't require that. I'm like, well, we do, because we really want to create not just housing, but quality affordable housing, quality neighborhoods, and so I'm excited to work with some of the presenters here today. Theo and I just met the other day, and so certainly some of your agencies. Hopefully I've given you enough that you'll have a lot of questions. So I'll leave it there.
That's great, Mark. It's been a great partnership to date, and I'm excited about where we're going. A lot of great efforts and continuing to build on things. And speaking of which, I'll say Theo and I, we met many years ago, back in my early planning days. But I would say, I want to say a fairly new partner, but a more formal partnership and relationship with the county and through an effort that we're doing. But Theo, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and letting everybody know what you have going on and a little more about the Greater Rochester Housing Partnership, that would be great.
Certainly. Thank you. And it's so nice to be here, and we're very excited to be partnering with Wayne County on your housing effort. And it's nice to reconnect with you, Brian, after a couple of decades.
That's right.
I'm Theo Finn. I'm with the Greater Rochester Housing Partnership and the Rochester Housing Development Fund Corporation. We are based in Rochester. We've been in existence for about 30 years. And we have two main functions. One is we serve as a nonprofit lender for affordable housing development projects. Our mission is to advance the development and preservation of affordable housing, really in the Finger Lakes region, but we have focused primarily in the city of Rochester and Monroe County. And so we are a nonprofit lender, and we provide different kinds of loans to help developers realize their projects. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the specific things later on. And then we do direct development of affordable homeownership housing. So we build some newly constructed homes in the city of Rochester, primarily for low and moderate income first-time home buyers. And then with our affiliate, the Rochester Housing Development Fund Corporation, we oversee an acquisition, rehab, resale program, both in the city of Rochester and in Monroe County, where we acquire vacant homes, single family homes. Typically, they are homes that are considered, zombie properties. They've been through a foreclosure process, have been sitting for a while. And then we work with various partners, with other nonprofits, with the municipalities, with small general contractors to rehab them for purchase by low and moderate income home buyers. And the land bank is a key partner of ours here in the city of Rochester. And we've done over 850 homes through that initiative over the past couple of decades. So that's work that we're proud of. And we had the opportunity to engage with our lender hat to help Wayne County advance its affordable housing strategy and to deploy some of the funding that was allocated for the strategy. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So very excited about the thoughtful work that's happening, and the really genuine, motivated partners here who want to do good and do it in a thoughtful way. And we're looking forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Great. Last but certainly not least, George, you've been in the trenches, if you will, I think, in boots on the ground in a specific market here in the county. But if you wouldn't mind, introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about what's going on in Newark and what you've seen over the last couple of years. And as Theo just keyed up, we'll have a deeper conversation in a minute, but if you don't mind introducing yourself and a little bit about what you guys are doing.
Sure, no problem. I'm George Getman. I am the Executive Director of the Newark Housing Authority. I've been here about 2 years now. In total, I have about 20 years in the affordable housing game. Before I came to Newark, I was in the Rochester Housing Authority for 17-something years. Here in the Newark Housing Authority, we basically have two main functions, or two main programs, if you want to call it, that we administer. The first one is the Housing Choice Voucher Program, which is more commonly known as the Section 8 program, in which we have 377 vouchers that we can award to eligible participants to help assist pay their rent with a private landlord anywhere within the Wayne County. Our jurisdiction's Wayne County. You have a number of income restrictions and qualifying guidelines in order to receive that assistance, and the property has to meet certain housing standards in order to qualify, as well as certain affordability standards. In addition to those 377 vouchers, we have 160 units here in the village of Newark that we own and manage, and that are also affordable housing. We're the landlords. It's affordable rent, and we're the landlords. So we got 160 units here in the village of Newark. And you asked me what kind of trends we've seen for the past 2 years. Total topsy-turvy with the whole pandemic, eviction moratorium, ERAP, all these different things have really thrown the affordable housing into a complete tizzy. We know the needs out there, the housing's not. The people wanting to be involved in this sort of business, or however you want to phrase it, is just not there. So there's definitely a lot of people out in the community that are struggling because they cannot find affordable housing, even with assistance. So it's really, this past couple of years has really thrown the whole industry, in my opinion, on top of its head. It's very, very difficult to predict. And it's a national problem. It's not just specific to Wayne County. It is a national problem. So yeah, that's kind of the nutshell of us.
Yeah, on its head, huh? Yeah, I couldn't agree more, at least anecdotally from the perspective that we're seeing here. And you know, I'm as the economic development, excuse me, as the economic development and planning department. You know, I think we have a role here, probably more on the planning side of things, but, you know, informed decision making is a key part of, I think, what we're doing. And Mark and Thomas, you know, we mentioned the derelict property study, and it's an effort to kind of evaluate the market and do some analysis early on as we were getting the land bank going. But Thomas, you know, we have a number of other initiatives going on through this office to kind of evaluate the market from a couple different perspectives. You know, one of the things we do think about is farmland protection, and you mentioned the proliferation of subdivisions or other things, the development pressures on the west side. But maybe you could give a little overview. You mentioned our efforts for the housing study, but maybe you could give a little overview on some of the things that we're doing moving forward, and then I'll try to connect some dots and get a little more of a conversation going about how we're all working together. So, Thomas, you want to key it off a little bit?
Sure. So as you mentioned, we are also doing the agricultural
Farmland protection.
Farmland protection program. We're also looking at a countywide broadband expansion, which may or may not be an impediment to certain developments. You know, as we've definitely seen in the pandemic, if you don't have internet access, quality, reliable internet access, you're kind of sunk in the market. So we've been working on that. We're also looking at a waste management, solid waste management plan. You know, our bread and butter is dealing with you know, the land use and review for that. We're looking at our business parks, you know, making sure that, you know, we have place for people to go to work. So we're looking at kind of where we can do improvements for that, quality of life in our parkland study as well. We're kind of soup to nuts as far as trying to figure out how to best move the puzzle pieces around in the county to make things go. On the economic development side, Brian could probably talk a little bit more about that. But we're trying to be able to provide incentives to encourage development of things.
You mentioned broadband. I mean, excuse me. Housing is such a key piece of the puzzle. I mean, if we're a puzzle, it'd be right in the middle, right? I mean, it makes everything go. Our ability to attract companies, providing quality housing for workers. It's really become clear, to George's point, about how housing impacts everything else. On the broadband side, you got some people have heard me say this. I don't know anyone who would buy a house that doesn't have broadband access. It's been such a vital component to the services and infrastructure, if you want to call it that. So we're really focused on that. But farmland protection is another thing. Maintaining the quality of the county, as far as maintaining our farmland and balancing the development pressures with the protection of farmland is certainly a key component. Last time we did a farmland protection plan, it was in 2012. So certainly due for an update. And I think in particular, very relative to all the work that everyone here at the table is doing, or at the Zoom webinar, if you will, at the table. But to build a little bit on what we were talking about. So, the land bank derelict property study, worst of the worst. We had a program through Enterprise that really facilitated us taking another step, right? So some data analysis, but also informed decision making, but also using that information to drive resources and bring things to the table to help address market externalities or help facilitate other opportunities. We recently sort of created a partnership with Theo there at the Housing Partnership. Theo, maybe you can elaborate a little on the new program we have and
Sure.
working on?
Certainly. So, yeah, as mentioned, there was some funding, I think, through the enterprise engagement, AG's office, and you all vetted through, I think you did a housing needs assessment and vetted, where are the key needs in Wayne County related to housing, and using that, you came up with a few different programs to use the funds that were allocated for. And one of them was the need to preserve your existing affordable housing, as well as meet the needs of folks who are facing homelessness. And so we know, through our experience, and I think you had identified this before identifying us as a partner, that to be able to preserve existing units, including rehab, your existing, an existing portfolio of affordable housing properties that maybe have been in place for a couple of decades and need upgrades, you need to secure, the developers or the owners need to secure financing to do those upgrades. And often there are some pre-development activities that need to happen in order to get that final financing to be able to renovate the properties. And we developed, in conjunction with Wayne County, a pre-development loan fund to help developers with those kinds of activities. So it's a pretty, I would say, flexible fund, and it's modeled after a fund that we've deployed in Rochester and Monroe County that offers developers of existing affordable housing projects, so those that have a regulatory agreement in place, meaning that it is regulated as long-term affordable housing, as well as projects that are for homeless populations. Transitional housing or emergency shelters also fit into the mix, can access these very flexible pre-development loan dollars up to $50,000 per project, actually, because it can contain multiple properties within a project, to help with things like capital needs assessment, walking through the building, determining what needs to happen to upgrade it, to preserve it as good housing over the long term for the folks who will be living there, architectural studies, environmental surveys. So, there may be environmental issues like lead that need to be dealt with, but a survey is needed to figure out what's there. Options. So if a existing project exists and a new owner might want to come into play and take over that project and then apply for the financing to make it good over the long term, they can use these dollars to secure the site through an option to get site control. So I don't know if you wanted me to go that deep yet, Brian, but basically we have this program, we're starting to roll it out. We have reached out to, the developers that we know who are working in the region, as well as some contacts that Wayne County provided, but wanted to take the opportunity today to share the program. It's a rolling application, a pretty simple application, and maybe it's something that could be shared with the group that's here, the audience after the fact. We've got the term sheet and the application. And again, it's up to $50,000 per project. It's a 0% interest, so really as generous, I think, as you can get with a loan in terms of interest. There are some fees, but those can be absorbed by the fund. Developer match is required, but we will look at that on a case-by-case basis. And then the term is 3 years. So it gives you 3 years to secure the final dollars to move your project forward, and those dollars would pay back the loan. And that term is extendable if you're making a good faith effort to get your project off the ground, and you can, demonstrate that to our organization, Wayne County. We would look at that on a case-by-case basis as well. So.
And George, you mentioned that there's this demand. I mean, so let's sticking with existing. You're working with a partner of ours through Patstone to help administer another piece of this program. Maybe you can elaborate a little on that side of the table.
Sure. Actually, I think it might have been Thomas who first approached me for our Landlord Rehab program, which, I don't know, it took a pretty long time to kind of put together. But basically, this is money that's been made available, grant money, to allow a landlord who is either interested in renting to a voucher holder, or maybe already renting to a voucher holder whose unit cannot pass HQS inspection, housing quality standards inspections, to either stay on the program or get on the program. It may need just that little bit of money that probably most of us don't have in the bank account to get the work done, to get it to qualify. So this is when we go to do an inspection and we identify a unit with a bunch of deficiencies, we'll probably reach out to the landlord, some informational stuff for them to see about getting involved and getting that grant money so they can make those necessary repairs with the commitment to actually rent to the voucher holder for a while. And Pathstone is administering all that. I met with some of them the other week, lovely people, easy to work with. And yeah, we're hoping we can preserve some housing and give some of these properties that just need that little extra oomph to make them work, get over that hurdle and get on. And as my Pathstone colleagues have told me, they have funding for other projects that may not meet the HQS. So you may come with a whole bunch of funding and get a whole bunch of stuff fixed up in one of your units.
Energy improvements, I think, through.
Yeah, it's weatherization, things of that nature. Yeah. So yeah, it's. I think it's very promising. We're still in the early stages, really, of identifying properties, but we're rolling with it. We're gonna get it as far as we can.
You mentioned, so a lot of focused on preservation, right? And I think it's a great lead into the work that we're doing at the land bank, right, Mark? It's not just demoing houses, which I think some people might think of land banks as it's knocking down the leaning, falling over house. Lots of opportunities out there, I think. Mark, you want to elaborate a little on what you've been seeing, discussions you've been having, and I think I'm very encouraged to hear that you and Theo are talking, right, about the resources that we're helping bring to the table and opportunities through the land bank. Maybe you can build a little on a lot of that.
Sure, and actually George and I are going to be talking because I'm feverishly taking some notes here as I'm listening to the other presenters. This is good stuff today. Yeah, again, when I first came on, we had 5 properties, 4 of them were going to be demolished. And so that was kind of the scope of where we were. However, that's changed over time as we built a close relationship with the county. Some of the properties we've gotten are ones that don't necessarily require demolition. But one thing that's always happened in the county tax auction, I'm sure this happens in all communities, properties go to the auction. There's no stipulations on what can happen with those properties. Somebody might buy it and go, oh, goodness, I guess I'm not going to do anything with that, or I'm not going to meet any standard with that. And so the property just kind of languishes in derelict or zombie status for an indefinite amount of time. The land bank is different. And one of the big tools we have is different is when the county gives a property to the land bank, when we sell the property, we can sell that with conditions. We put a performance lien on there that says, okay, Brian Pinchelli, you will do these things. If you want this property, you will agree to do these things in this amount of time. Again, to Theo's point, if we're seeing good progress, we're not out to take properties back or enforce those liens if we don't have to, but we certainly can. Because if there's a property that's marginal that we would like to see rehabbed or redeveloped, we want that done quickly. And we're doing that with some. We've actually done that with some who, neighbors, for instance, who wanted to tear the property down themselves. So we've sold it, and the condition of sale was, okay, you take the old stuff down and you do something new there. So that's a huge tool we have. It's also created good conversations. And I was listening to George talking about the HQS standards. I think as I've met with, just about every code enforcement officer in the county now, at some level, a lot of frustration on code enforcement officers too. So the land bank has come in, and we're getting rid of a lot of those derelict property, those original derelict properties, zombie properties. A lot of those are going away. The next goal is to make sure that the future doesn't have all those properties. That's, we don't want that to happen. And certainly a lot of that is related to housing. So as we enforce some of these similar standards to what George is saying for the housing authority, or what code enforcement enforcers would like to do in their towns, I think the conversations are going in a way where we're gonna, I don't know how to describe it, I guess, but there's a growing interest in improving the stock in Wayne County. And
Breaking the cycle, right, Mark? I mean,
break the cycle.
We're talking about preservation, right? Which is kind of facilitating reinvestment.
Yep.
Through what we can do and working together with the towns. I mean, I always say, there's no county without the towns, right? I mean, it's just the outline of a group of towns. So
right.
It's a partnership between the land bank and the county, the towns and the county, the towns and the land bank, working with partners to bring resources to the table. One of the things we've been really working on, you mentioned this a little bit, is brownfields, right? So it kind of plays into that group of derelict properties. Maybe you could elaborate a little on what we're doing now, and then I'll jump in at some point and maybe.
Sure, I've got a great example for you. So we took a property from the county 2 years ago. Actually, no, this one we actually got out of bankruptcy. So it was a property of great concern to many in the county. So we approached the bankruptcy attorney. We got the property. We demolished it. Well, during the demolition, we found there were 4 old fuel tanks on the site. As of yesterday, when I spent the afternoon with DEC, we have 8 tanks on that site.
Oops.
And so again, this is at the center of one of the towns here in Wayne County. Certainly a parcel that is very developable, center of town, so the brownfield money. So again, Brian and his area have applied for brownfield grant money that allowed us to do assessment. As part of that assessment, we're also able to do some work because, for instance, we have to take tanks out to see if there's anything bad underneath them.
Right.
So we're starting to clean things up. We're also looking at applying for additional grants as we identified properties that may need rehab to clean those up. And one of the things that I should also say is we've 2 years ago, the county, the land bank, and DEC developed a memorandum of understanding that if the county or the land bank takes a property and we do due diligence to clean it up, there's no liability for the county or the land bank on those properties. In the past, the county was nervous, or the land bank would have been nervous about taking a property because of old sins. And so we stopped that chain of liability through this MOU. So it really empowers us to be able to clean these things up and get rid of them once and for all. So if you're a property owner and you have one of these places that you think, oh boy, I know I got a mess there. There's ways to do this in Wayne County now that you don't have to be afraid of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're figuring all the procedures out, but there's going to be a way for private owners to deal with issues that they know and it keeps them awake at night. Again, economic development and planning just started a revolving loan fund for brownfields. And so they can certainly leverage that money. We're also looking to apply for some more grant money. So we really, I guess if I can leave you with anything today, we're the land bank and those associated with it. We have a 9-member board of directors, fantastic group of people. The board of supervisors for the county, you know, 100% support. We are really passionate about really raising Wayne County's game for, like, you know,
Raising the bar, yeah.
raising the bar. We want to clean the old stuff up and get rid of it because unfortunately some stuff has exhausted its useful life. There's some stuff here that shouldn't be here anymore. We need to get rid of it. And then we need to work together just to up the game for how people live in our county and how people work in our county and how they interact. And so
It's not just knocking down buildings though, right, Mark? I mean, you know,
absolutely not.
it's to the point, your point on, you know, the property that you've been referencing is a good redevelopment opportunity, right? We don't have to keep sprawling, we don't have to keep redeveloping, bringing resources to the table. You just mentioned our pending, if you will, revolving loan fund. So recently awarded $1 million that we'll be administering through the Wayne Economic Development Corporation. So in total, we'll have a little under, just about 1.2 million to help finance remediation projects. And you mentioned, so the property you have there, you know, assessment grants, right? So we can evaluate the condition of a piece of property to evaluate what it would take to get it back to productive use. And, you know, all of this is about, and you mentioned the partnership with DC, and I think of it as a partnership, right? That MOU really gets us all working together and on the same page to say, we can't just keep kicking the can down the road. And not making any disparages, but what affordable housing, redevelopment, bringing resources to the table. I mean, I think that's what this is all about. And it really takes, well, like they say, right? It takes a village, right? It takes partnerships with the housing authorities, with resource partners, through our department, through the land bank, through other county departments, you know, and you know, side lot development is great. You know, I know that through the land bank, we've been working with adjacent homeowners who are willing to, you know, add a little to the property that they have and take care of those lots. But it's not just demoing properties and taking care of eyesores. It's really about infill development, bringing property back to productive use. And I'm excited a lot where things are going. Excuse me. Deb just mentioned, excuse me. If there are questions along the way here, feel free to put them in the chat box. We've been talking a lot about affordable housing or derelict properties. It's not the only area that we're looking at. Thomas mentioned the housing study. I mean, soup to nuts here. I think we're really interested in evaluating the housing market. Thomas, you want to elaborate a little on what our goals are with our upcoming housing study? And I mean, it's a pretty substantial project for us. And like I said, housing is pervasive, right? I mean, it impacts everything from social services to economic development and our ability to attract companies or develop a workforce. So, Thomas, you want to elaborate a little on what we're doing?
Yeah, definitely. So we've kind of got some decent knowledge of kind of the affordable housing market, which I do want to just take a quick step back to kind of explain. You know, there's different definitions, but what affordable housing is. But generally speaking, that's, you know, kind of no more than 30% of household income going to that, and that falls under more of the stuff that you know, George was mentioning. You know, the subsidized, you know, through the housing choice voucher, low income housing tax credits, things like that. But it's also the naturally occurring affordable housing, just houses that are priced at a good point for that. So we've started to get a pretty good handle on that, but you know, figuring out what the market conditions are for kind of that market rate, you know, just what's available on the private market that maybe doesn't have subsidies or other sorts of limits on income levels. Figuring out, you know, what factors are going into where a new subdivision is going in, and what we might be able to do to align resources and infrastructure to encourage it where maybe you want to see that. But one area that is kind of becoming more of a hot topic is what's known as missing middle housing. So for a long time, there's been, you know, focus on single family homes, on, you know, freestanding sort of thing, and then the other option is sort of that extreme level, or not extreme, but you know, the larger apartment buildings, things like that. And so missing middle is kind of everything in between. You know, it's the duplex, the triplex, townhomes, garden apartments, things like that. And so trying to figure out where that kind of fits into the mix of things. And you know, there was some discussion at the state level about accessory dwelling units, whether or not that, you know, the state was looking at doing that kind of across the board, and that may not be appropriate in some of our more rural communities. But you know, that may be something that we look at. You know, is that appropriate for the village centers? And accessory dwelling units are, you know, if you think back to the old happy days, Fonzie lived in an apartment above the garage. You know, so it's a sort of, you know, either on top of a garage or a little granny flat addition to the house, things like that, which is different than the tiny homes, which are kind of freestanding cottages. So we really just want to see what the mix is, where there might be opportunities to fit that in, what the underlying infrastructure and other conditions are to either encourage or redirect you know, housing developments around the county.
Great. You know, everyone here is you know, boots on the ground, and I'm sure you might feel like you don't need a housing study to understand. I'm curious what you're seeing in the market, right? I mean, we can see somewhat anecdotally what we're feeling as far as demand for housing or development pressures. And George, you mentioned it. I know through conversations that there's a demand for affordable housing, but maybe you could elaborate a little on the type of demand and what you're seeing and
Sure.
the market's going. No, George, if you don't mind jumping in there. Thanks, Tom.
No worries.
We'll hear from you too, Thomas. I'm interested in what you're hearing. Very, you know, in Newark, you know, or Arcadia, you know, the most populated town in the county.
You know, universally across the whole county, there's a real lack of affordable housing, and it seems to only be getting worse. With the last 2 years, honestly, I think a lot of landlords, well, everybody, whatever scope it is, whether you're a tenant or landlord, really had a rough go of it this last couple of years. I think that's just a universal truth these days. And I think a lot of, anecdotally from our end, there's a lot of people that are getting out of the landlording game. They're selling their properties off. And they've just had it down there at a point of retiring, whatever it might be. They're getting out of the game. So the number of affordable housing in the area is just dropping. So there's less units available to lease up. I honestly, our program is bleeding applicants, or not applicants, excuse me, participants, and we cannot find housing enough to replace all those people. I right now have 23 people out on the street, as we call it, looking for affordable housing, and they've been looking for months. And they're looking all different parts of the county, so it's definitely out there. I think another factor is, you know, the hot real estate market. So when the real estate market's hot and the housing prices are high, then rents go up. So the second issue we're having is that we're seeing a lot of rents that I don't think in the long term are sustainable in the county, but you know, that doesn't mean folks aren't going to ask for that rent. And you know, if they take 2 months to before they can find an interested party, maybe it starts to come down, but that's a long-term process. And plus, a lot of landlords may be trying to recoup the losses from the eviction moratorium and all these other unusual factors that we've never had to deal with as well. So it's a tough game to be in. As someone who's been in the landlording game as a HUD program for the last 20 years, I always tell my wife I'd never want to be a landlord. So I know it's a hard game, even though I do it. So that's kind of what I'm seeing, is just the available housing stock is it just seems to be dropping, or they're just not willing, people aren't willing to take a chance on this, our type of program, because it is, you know, it's taxpayers' money. So there's paperwork involved. You're going to jump through hoops in order to get taxpayers' money, whether you're the landlord or the participant. We ask you for lots of paperwork, no matter which side you are. So I think those are kind of the trends we're seeing right now. And it's really finding the housing is our biggest hurdle right now. Because I've got the people on the street looking for the housing, they've been approved. We just need to find a unit for them, and they're just really struggling to find it. And they're looking all over the county. So
Theo, I imagine similar things, right? Maybe
Yeah, I think everything George said is playing out in our community as well. And, you know, he mentioned the eviction moratorium. I guess I'm concerned that when folks, you know, if folks start to get evicted, that problem will probably just get worse in terms of being able to find units for more people who aren't in their current unit. And then I guess I would just add on the homeownership side, because we do work in that space, the hot market has made it that much more difficult for folks to find a homeownership opportunity that's affordable. And there are dynamics in this market that aren't necessarily beneficial for first-time home buyers. You know, being able to offer cash isn't something all folks can do. Waiving an inspection isn't necessarily a great idea, but people are doing it. So, you know, just similar weird issues on that side as well. So,
well, I mentioned, you know, we're certainly aware of what you're hearing in the news and somewhat anecdotally these issues. And I think, again, you know, maybe not exclusively, but the land bank, I think, provides a significant amount of opportunity, right? You know, in particular, we've been having discussions on the home ownership side. So, you know, again, it's not just about demoing properties, but so Mark, you know, maybe you can elaborate a little on. So you mentioned that the enforcement mortgage, but maybe elaborate a little on the conversations we've been having about potential ownership opportunities, or the process of taking foreclosed properties or properties that come into possession of the land bank and working with populations.
Yeah, so I think to date, and certainly when we started, the primary way we were getting properties was through the county's tax foreclosure process. So we would vet all the properties that the county was receiving through foreclosure, and to be honest with you, we would take the worst of the worst, which was what the thinking of the land bank, that was our role. That's evolved some. Now I think as we've taken the worst of the worst and we've dealt with numbers of them, now there's some of those that are on the fence. You know, could they be fixed? Could they be demoed? And how do we go about that? We've also taken donations. We're a 501c3. And so we can take donations. There are actually people out there who we just had an experience where, a father had passed away. The children wanted nothing to do with the property and said, hey, we'd like to donate this. And then it becomes a property of the land bank, then potentially do something with, including affordable housing. So we can do it that way. Brian and I have talked about maybe getting into foreclosures, bank foreclosure kind of properties. And sometimes those come back to the banks in pretty rough shape. And so we might be able to do something in that space. I did notice in the chat, there was a question about the stipulations we put on contractors, people that want to buy our properties. Every property is a little bit different. Every neighborhood is a little different. And what I will say is, we have committed as a board, I've committed personally to not doing things in people's towns that they don't want done. We're not trying to push stuff through that. I'm not going to fight with town boards and town supervisors to do good things in their town. So that's just not what that's not what we're about. And so as we look at properties, I talk to the code enforcer, I talk to the town supervisor and say, what do you think about this property? What do you think we could do with it? Is there something the town would like to see done, or the village, and those kind of things? So that kind of sets the stage for what I go back to my board and say, okay, here's what the supervisor says, here's what the code enforcer says, and then we make our decisions on the property itself. Then in terms of, we accept applications for properties, and we're in an interesting position because we don't have to take the highest bid. We take the right bid, and so the right application. And so again, if we can find good partners who want to do really good things with affordable housing, just a property here in Lyons was just renovated. The land bank was only involved in conversations, was not directly involved, but through the county and DSS and the private developer, some really quality transitional housing was created. And so we want to work with quality contractors. So I'll be very frank. If I were to talk to a supervisor or a code enforcer and they say, we've had a lot of trouble with that particular applicant, it'd be hard for me to recommend that applicant to the board to sell to. We're looking for people who want to do good stuff, not people who are trying to skirt and get by. And I'm a landlord myself, so I know how easy it is to want to slide by sometimes. But we really need to commit to this. I guess I keep going on the quality thing. And it's nice is again, conversations with Theo and now with George, their organizations and their funding are certainly committed to the same. And so I'm excited about that. The other thing it's not all about affordable. And Thomas spoke a little bit to this, through personal contacts and making connections. There's going to be some really cool market rate stuff going on in Wayne County too. So that's exciting as well.
A lot of different, I'm sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to cut
No, you go ahead.
A lot of different market pressures, right? And George and Theo, you guys have elaborated a little on that. It's a difficult market for first-time home buyers, or the affordability of that segment of the marketplace. I'm mindful of it, but a housing study, if you will, again, data-driven decision-making. How do I say this? I feel like we're a little behind, right? I mean, maybe we should have been looking at the market, but it's a dynamic market and things are changing very rapidly. But what is the demand, and what steps can we take to help accommodate, let's say, first-time home buyers who might be interested in purchasing a home? But I'm also mindful of the fact that when I was in my 20s, I didn't want to own a home. I wanted to rent because of the flexibility, and how are we accommodating that market, whether it's affordable or not. So I'm mindful, and I know, we're going to, through the process of evaluating and doing this housing study, we're really going to paint hopefully a good picture of opportunity so that we can point to and have discussions, to Mark, to your point, with supervisors and other leaders in the county on, here are some steps we can take to help meet that market demand. And whether, especially on the affordable side, on the middle market side, Thomas, to your point on that conversation, and maybe otherwise. But it's really through partnerships, and I think the land bank is a key partner there, to helping address affordability, whether it's literally on the availability of an affordable apartment to rent, or on the availability of a home to purchase in the county. And some comments in the chats about, or you mentioned, waiving inspections. Of course, I wouldn't recommend that to anyone as well, but you see that in the market given what the demand has been, and interest rates. Now interest rates are changing. How is that going to affect the market and market demand? But helping, mindful through partnerships that we need to be facilitating reinvestment in our housing stock. If you look at the county and some of our housing study, you'll look at this. What is the age of the housing stock, affordable and otherwise? And I feel we have some resources at the table to help accommodate and facilitate reinvestment, whether it's a landlord-driven program or a developer-driven program. But how are we helping current or new homeowners reinvest in the housing that might have been built in the 30s, the 40s, the 20s, the 10s? There's some housing in the county that is early 1900s, and maybe some of it predating that. So how are we helping facilitate reinvestment of that? And Mark, to your point earlier about breaking the cycle, right? We can't just watch buildings continue to deteriorate without facilitating some reinvestment. And given the market as it is, that can prove a challenge. Any other thoughts on that stuff? I mean, we're getting some questions in the chat here. Well, let's get a little specific here. So Mark, what stipulations on you mentioned the enforcement mortgage. There's no pre-qualified list of contractors to the land bank, right?
No, we have not gone to that. Again, we're just going into that space right now. The ones we've done primarily have been private individuals who wanted to rehab a home and use that as a rental or even flip. So that's kind of how it's gone so far. We don't have pre-approved lists, but what I would say, and I think this is again, those conversations. I talk to the code enforcer in every town that we're working in. They all know me. They've all got my cell phone number in their phone. Some of them I get texts at 4 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, just for the question. So it's what I would say is, although we don't have pre-approved contractors, if contractors and property owners aren't doing the right stuff, they're probably not going to be on the top of our list of people we want to work with. And so that's kind of how it's gone so far, and probably would evolve. For instance, you can't, if you want to buy one of our properties, you can't be delinquent on other properties you already own. There can't be code violations on other properties you already own. And so we'll check those things, and those things are important to us. If a town's had difficulty with someone, that's going to be something we consider. So because again, we're trying to improve the communities, because the only way that we can all be successful is if we have these kind of discussions. We all know who the potential partners are, the good partners, and for lack of a better word, exploit those relationships. Certainly leverage those relationships to get good stuff done. One thing I see, and again, this will come out of these studies and some stuff we've already talked about, but I'm feverishly taking notes today, because I'm learning as I'm listening to people today. We need to have a repository of this information, of these opportunities, and that's going to be exciting. That's once we get there, I think we'll see more people who want to do good things. And again, I think any town, any community, the land bank, boy, if we can find some landlords who really want to do good things, I'm excited to work with them and make some things happen in Wayne County.
It takes a village, right, Mark?
It takes a village.
Work together.
That's what's going to keep me from retiring again.
So, so we're talking about, what we're, the market, the changing dynamic, what we're seeing in the marketplace. I'm always, gosh, and I hope maybe not too much, but I'm always kind of thinking ahead, right? Or thinking about, what's missing. So I'll start with Theo, if you don't mind. Theo, what is missing? What are you seeing that, man, if I had a unexpendable bank account, if I had could wave a magic wand, what do you think, folks maybe in a position like mine or other communities should be thinking about bringing to the table to help address issues in the market or demand? Or things
That's interesting. Well, I guess funding is if you had the money, right? So to, maybe to assemble land, that might be something you could, and use your powers to assemble land and then use that money to help people, get over the hump of the difference between, what they might have to make it happen and what's needed to actually make it happen. So I think often gap financing is something that keeps folks from being able to move forward with redevelopment of a property because the market dynamics don't always match up in terms of what it might take to let's say a derelict property, because we have a lot of experience there, what it might take to bring it up to a standard, and it might be an important property and it might not be one that's meant for demolition, but still needs a lot of work. And offering some incentives in terms of resources to make the numbers work is probably something that would be helpful. And similarly on larger projects, I think the costs of construction have been high to begin with, pre-COVID, and they've been going up since COVID, and it's hard to make the numbers work. So I think if you had an unlimited bank account, if you could offer some incentives to folks, I think what you're doing with the brownfields is important. Having resources to just understand and address those issues really can make the difference in making those properties, something that's productive versus something that's just sitting there. So
yeah,
off the cuff.
Yeah, completely off the cuff.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, it's great.
And not really understanding your specific, community, what the key projects that you want to see happen are.
Right. So that's communication with the folks who live there, right? And supervisors and code officers. I think, to your first point there, I'm hopeful that I think seeing a real, folks are really starting to buy in the idea of what a land bank is, right? And it's not to your point about aggregating properties or it's in the name, land bank. Right? I mean, they're banking properties and pulling things together to help encourage and facilitate investment in the state budget this year. We saw the state's first commitment to funding land banks. So I think there's Mark, right? I think there's 50 million in the state budget.
50 million.
This round, and there's around 25 or 26 land banks across the state. So, roughly 2 million each. It's a lot of money, but money goes fast. But helping facilitate land banks, Mark, are you getting that sense from the land? I know there's an association at the state level.
Yeah. So that's I think I definitely land banks have again, first time we've ever got an appropriation. There was money through the Attorney General in the past, but now there's actually money appropriated. We're very fortunate in Wayne County in the Finger Lakes. Both Assemblyman Mankelo and Senator Helming. Senator Helming actually met with our land bank board the other day for a few minutes, which was really great. Assemblyman Mankelo was actually part of starting the land bank here in Wayne County. So we've had a great commitment here in the Finger Lakes and in Wayne County in particular. And so I think that's only going to increase. And so one of the things I think as we move forward as a board, again, we'll find other ways to, as Theo was mentioning, talking about aggregating properties and, finding, getting neighborhoods. And if we can be a part of that, including, in some cases, purchasing properties, which is fairly new to us, because that just isn't something we've done a lot of yet. But that may be the best thing to help a town or a neighborhood prepare for some redevelopment. So I think there's going to be more resources, and there's also a good pot of money through HCR in the budget for affordable housing. And land banks are the association is making a pitch to be considered highly in that how that money is appropriated and divvied up. So again, I want us to be a responsible player. Our board wants us to be a responsible player. And certainly because of the how we're organized in New York State, we have some flexibility that municipalities do not have. And so I think these are going to be exciting times. I really do. And again, there's great partners out there. I think Wayne County is, I know Wayne County is committed to doing some good stuff. I'm just reading some of these chats here, and I, you know, from the land bank's perspective, I just want to make sure I'm not leaving people with a sense that we're not willing to work with good people who want to do good things, because we are. That's what we're looking for. So as you come before us with applications, or as you work with us on projects, you're just going to have to show us you're good people wanting to do good things. That's what we're looking for, and that's what will make our communities better, I think. So we're certainly willing to work with everybody, but again, people are going to, whether it's landlords or developers or whoever, you've just got to show your commitment to the county, to the community, and to doing what's best for people. One thing I will say, in all of our liens that we put on properties that are going to be rehab, code enforcers have the final say on when that lien is released, in terms of you have to be meeting all local codes. That's one of the blanket things we put in there, as well as specific things like roofs, siding, septic, water, whatever those other things might be. You also have to meet every local code.
That's great. No feedback, but so George, the same question I have for Theo. I know I'm putting you guys a little on the spot here, but I mean, you know, one of the things, let's maybe, well, so Section 8 vouchers, right? And I think sometimes you feel that maybe there's a resistance in the marketplace or on the landlord side of the table, but what is it, education? Or I mean, what's missing from your perspective, or how can we help or help facilitate?
Well, I think a lot of mine will probably be anecdotal, from just years of experience,
Yeah.
obviously. But I don't, you know, market rate, all that stuff is not a concern for me. Mine is affordable housing. We just need more landlords that are interested in either developing affordable housing, which is, you know, is not simple these days. You can't just throw up a complex someplace and away you go. It's a little more complicated than that. That are willing to maybe ask a little bit less than necessarily the market rate is, but get a kind of guaranteed rent. That's one thing with our program, is that we are going to pay a portion of the rent. Sometimes it's all the rent, sometimes it's just a portion, every month, as long as you maintain your property and you adhere to the rules of the program. But I honestly, I think one of our biggest impediments, and I've said this many times, is discrimination, to be perfectly honest, is that I'm not going to take a risk on those folks. They work part-time at Walmart. They don't have money. They're X, Y, and Z type of a person. And I think that's just classism. It's an American way. You're supposed to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and make a living and overcome all of your challenges. And if you don't do that, you're a bad person, which is inherently not true, because a lot of people can't work, not because they don't want to, but they can't, or they were doing great and then God forbid something happened. Just look at our healthcare. You go to the hospital for one illness for a little bit of time, you could be just completely ruined. So I think that is definitely a major hurdle sometimes for landlords feeling wanting to get involved in the program, because they're worried they're going to have their units damaged and this, that, the other thing. And from all the years and years of being a renter and running this program, your income limit doesn't really dictate what kind of a renter you're going to be. Some of the cleanest, nicest, most beautiful apartments I ever been in are people that are on a fixed Social Security income who could never, ever, ever rent in the private market. And some of the messiest, sloppiest places I've ever lived in are people who make a ton of money. So I use that anecdote quite a bit. And it's true. It's just, it's not just your income that is really going to dictate.
So a bit
Now,
of
there may be-
education, would you say? A bit of market education, right? And
Yeah, and familiarity with the program, because there's some of our landlords love us. They absolutely love our programs. And they don't mind doing the paperwork and going through the inspection, because if you're maintaining your properties to an adequate level, you're probably not going to have any issues. You got a few forms and whatnot, a few hoops to jump through, but you'll get involved and you'll have a stable tenant. The whole point is to have a stable tenant for somebody.
elaborate on that a little bit. Stable tenancy, or the consistency of the money.
Right. So the program is based on 30% of your income, whatever your income might be, and we'll fill in the gap up to a certain dollar amount. Now, that dollar amount is a little troublesome because it's based on rents from 2 years ago. So HUD is always 2 years behind, and they dictate what I get to do. So you got somebody who is working those part-time jobs, those low wage jobs that are, or seasonal jobs. We get a lot of people that work seasonal jobs. You know, they're doing landscaping in the good weather. In the winter, they've got nothing else to do, so they lose all sorts of income. So we fill in the gap. So we'll fill in, they'll contribute 30% to the gross rent. So that's your rent plus your utilities, which we all know is a little haywire these days. We'll try to fill in the gap to make up the difference. And as that person's income changes, we will adjust how much we will contribute. So you suddenly are unemployed, not a problem, tell us, we'll make up the difference. So where in the private market, some of these folks, you lose their job, your rent is still your rent, and you got to somehow come up with it. So then you got a landlord who's now may be totally willing to work with a tenant, but the tenant just does not have the income, and you go down the route of eviction, and then that's no good for anybody, really. Everyone's losing out in that game. So that's really the point, is we want someone to be able to stay where they are despite all their ups and downs with their employment and income and whatnot, and also try to assure to that person that we're allowing them to live in a place that is safe and of quality. We don't, it's, again, back to the taxpayer dollars. You want taxpayers to pay part of your rent, you're going to have to jump through some hoops and prove you're qualified for it. You want to receive taxpayer dollars in the form of a rent subsidy, you're going to have to make sure your property is up to a certain standard. So ultimately, we're responsible to the taxpayers, I guess. It's usually not discussed that way, but I kind of see it that way.
I think that's great. And again, I think, it's up to, all of us to do what we can to help educate the market, right? And understand that there's this, it's a business without dancing around it, right? I know landlords are interested in investing in property that are providing returns. But on the affordable side, there's a market demand and need for us to bring in resources, if you will, or pull resources together to help facilitate. You're going to get a little less than what the market might be demanding for that property, but there's subsidies and programs that help with rehabs, or subsidies and programs that help with rents and cash flow for tenants and landlords. So it's a matter of, us in the county or us in the region coming together, bringing those resources to the table and educating the market on the opportunity, if you will. And I know there's some landlords participating here today who are probably either apprehensive or asking themselves questions about opportunities to invest in the market. And hopefully folks are hearing a little bit about opportunities and resources at the table, meeting some partners who can help facilitate it, whether it's acquiring properties through the land bank, or accessing programs and opportunities for tenancy, or market studies and other things leading to redevelopment or development opportunities. There are some questions. I'm reading all the questions in the chat, and some of them are above my pay grade and above the things that I might not be able to control entirely you know, I think we're all mindful of the cost of utilities, for example. It's tough. I think everybody across the market is struggling with the cost of utilities, and we're seeing increases across the board. So efforts at the state level, I mean, there are, let's call them regulated monopolies, if you will, right, as far as the delivery of services, but certainly mindful of the cost of utilities, in particular for affordable housing and tenancy there. I'm reading some of the other questions here.
Brian, there's a couple there that I'd
Yeah.
like to just speak to
Go ahead.
real quickly.
Yeah,
But again, just in my work in towns and across some in New York State here, one of the questions was, are we considering changing zombie laws in Wayne County for properties? So this is something that really would be generated in each town, but certainly towns could be more aggressive at going after zombie properties than we typically are. How much we do that is probably going to be dependent on each town. I am aware of a small city in eastern New York, Gloversville. It actually happened to be the place I was born. And I was back there a couple weeks ago and reading the paper. They're actually tightening their law on some of the zombie stuff. And so you know, the libertarian in me, that bothers me a little bit, but at the same time, when I know that the property isn't being taken care of and it's negatively impacting communities, I think we do need to be more aggressive. So we'll see how that plays out. I think we're hearing a lot more about that across the state. I think you know, again, as communities have gotten more concerned, as code enforcers have gotten more concerned, as the courts will go back to maybe backing up code enforcers a little more. I think some of this stuff is going to become more of an issue. Now, at the same time, what I do like is, you know, listening to George and Brian talking, there's money to help with these things. So we have a code enforcer on our land bank board. And so ideally when Roger goes out to serve somebody with a notice of something that needs to be fixed, it'd be nice if the next sheet would say, you might want to contact this, and this to get help doing that. That would make his job better, because his job is to try to keep things good and within code. And if he can provide resource that might be an incentive to do this work, that's fantastic. I just put a couple roofs on this past fall. Oh my, that's going to take me a long time to get that money back. So it's not a cheap gig right now, being a landlord. So I certainly feel for any landlords out there. So I'm with you on that. The other thing was the ag. You know, I think as we, you know, preserving ag land, especially in a county like Wayne County, many people don't know we have some of the best soil in the United States. We're the #2 apple producing county in the country. Our yields on things like corn and soybeans far exceed the national average, where we compete with the I-states. And so we've got some good stuff here. So we want to be careful to preserve that, because that's what made Wayne County what Wayne County is. But at the same time, you know, finding a way to have effective economic development that keeps our communities vibrant and engaged and doing good stuff, keeps our schools active and full.
yeah, I agree, Mark. And I'll tell you, so, you know, Thomas mentioned very briefly our efforts on so we're just getting ready to start a farmland protection plan update. And Thomas, maybe you want to, so we're looking at other opportunities. We've done, gosh, we're doing a business plan study. We've done other studies here and derelict properties and all these other things. And part of what we've been talking about is kind of pulling some of these threads together. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what we're discussing in a program we're pursuing.
Yeah, so still in the works. We're applying this round for state funding to do what's known as a smart growth plan. So really kind of tying all of the current efforts going together, and kind of on that ag side, you know, we've been looking a lot, seeing a lot more application for solar and how does that play into the field. pun intended, somewhat, but trying to put all those pieces together so that, we can encourage development, encourage redevelopment as well, that infill in the best possible way so that we are providing for our residents, but protecting and maintaining our current farmland, and just kind of putting all those, having a puzzle board to kind of put all these pieces together and really understand that whole process. There's a number of aspects as far as walkability and things like that that are specific to the smart growth program, but really figuring out the best place and the best use for our different types of land. I completely agree with Mark. We've got some of the best soils in the world, in fact, and so want to make sure that we're good stewards of that.
Got a little under 10 minutes left here. This has been, I think, a really great conversation. And I think really just a starting point. I mean, we've already started, right? But I think the point I'm trying to make is that these are ongoing conversations, developing and growing partnerships. I'm going to give everyone a chance to, so George, I don't know if that was intentional, you raising your hand.
No.
Okay. We've talked a lot, and you guys are, if you're monitoring the chat, there's lots of questions. We're not going to really be able to address everything here, but, well, I'll start with maybe just a point that I think is very important. Land use happens locally, right? I mean, we are partners to 15 towns and 7 villages in Wayne County through our office. And, the work that we do through our office, and Thomas and me and Mark, and all you guys, it's really about helping, especially on the planning side of our office, is helping guide the decision makers to good decision making. What the housing study is about, and why I'm excited about the idea of doing let's call it a smart growth comprehensive plan, right? It's kind of, let's take a broad brush look at the county, but if we're thinking about development or redevelopment, right? Or, we're on the economic development side of the office, we're interested in business attraction, looking to help create jobs and economic growth in the county. But how do you do it? I want to be mindful of farmland protection. I want to be mindful of housing opportunities and the connection between, workforce. So on the economic development side of things, if we're looking at business attraction opportunities, the number one thing, the top of the list for any company considering locating in upstate New York, in Wayne County, or the region here, is workforce. I mean, to have the availability and a good quality workforce, guess what? You need good quality, affordable housing. I mean, it's vital. So, we're not a housing agency, but we're certainly part of the mix. And partnering and working through studies and bringing resources to the table. I said this will be the 3rd or 4th time. It takes a village, right? Or it takes a town. Let's put it that way. So I'm mindful that, bringing resources to the table through or with the towns is a key component here, whether it's affordable housing programs or, other things to help with rehab costs, first-time home buyer programs, and discussions around benefits around taxes or other things. I mean, there's a myriad of things. We don't have to invent the wheel here, but I think all of the work that we do here, the conversations and developing relationships, is about exploring those opportunities and doing what we can to help facilitate, addressing issues in the market or helping facilitate growth in the right way. Kind of tying things up here, but I want to give everyone a chance to elaborate a little on any thoughts, final thoughts, comments, questions. George, you're on my screen, so you can go first.
Well, I think just reviewing the chats and my experience and whatnot, there's no easy solution, obviously. There's a myriad of different things in play, despite the last 2 years. I mean, I think we just take the last 2 years for granted, that it just screwed up everything. But even without that, there's no simple solution. You can't just come in and throw up 12 affordable housing. Again, I'm talking about affordable housing. 12 affordable housing units and put a bunch of people in it and wash your hands and be like, yay, good, that solved the problem for, a month or two, because it's not that easy. There's obviously, you got to have economic development. You got to have, the jobs for all these people. You got to have things for people to do. And if you don't have that, our populations tend not to get smaller. They tend to get bigger. There's more and more people. There's more and more places you got to put people. So it's not an easy solution. There's just it's got to be myriad of approaches from different angles to really address the problem altogether. And I think that extends beyond just housing as an issue as well. I think it's just the nature of our society that we're going to have some of these problems inherent forever, more than likely. So you just got to approach them with a level-headed and thought-out approach. I'm a personal believer in that lasting change takes time. There is no quick solution to anything, and any quick solution there is probably not going to last. So yeah, I guess that's kind of just sums up. And any of you landlords who are out there on the chat who are interested in being involved, reach out to us. Someone did make a comment. Maybe we have an informational session. I would love to do that. I've done that in the past, gone to landlord associations and whatnot. Tend to be poorly attended, but hey, any one landlord with 3 units is a win for me. So, feel free to reach out to me if you're not already familiar with us as well.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. I'll say, we started Zoom meeting stuff when all the chaos started a couple of years ago, and it's not always easy to get folks to attend in person because people live. I mean, it's a fairly good sized region.
Yeah.
Deb mentioned a couple of the meetings that we've had already. This is intended to be an ongoing effort here. So again, to your point, I would encourage anyone, attending via Zoom, reach out to any one of us. I mean, I think we're here to listen and help and do what we can, but this is going to be an ongoing thing for us in this department, at least in helping facilitate discussions, bringing resources to the table, and facilitating input and question and answer, and an opportunity to help share information about what's out there. Theo, any final thoughts, comments, questions, anything that
I mean, I think what George said is right on. This is exciting, and I think you all are being very thoughtful and trying to strike that balance. It was interesting to hear, from the holistic standpoint, like, you want economic development, but farms are really important, really, no farms, no food. You're important to the region, not just Wayne County. And so that was interesting to hear about. And I guess I would just add, from that holistic standpoint, and having heard Mark talk about, so all the different people he's working with, and it's in our name, Greater Rochester Housing Partnership. It's about those partnerships among the housing folks, but then also between those other disciplines, I guess, to really to do it in hopefully an effective way. So excited to be a small part of it.
I would have called small, Theo. I think we'll see where it goes. I mean, I'm excited about the relationship we have and what we're doing with our initial program effort. And you mentioned, Mark and the land bank. I'm very excited about the direction we're going with the land bank. And Mark, it's been 3 or 4 years now.
3 years, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in overtime, Brian.
That's right. Just getting started, I think, I don't want to say sky's the limit, but I mean, dealing with the initial sort of broad, blunt brush blow, if you will, on what we had been doing at the county level as far as these derelict properties go, and then helping. I mean, you're seeing the resources come to the table for land banks and the buy-in from the legislature. Thoughts, comments on all this and the land bank's perspective and work that we're doing there?
Yeah, again, I tell people all the time, we're just a cog in the wheel. We try to do a little facilitating, try to do a little work, try to, help conversations take place. I think that's one thing I've seen, and certainly I think this event today is an example of that. Just conversations that weren't taking place 4 or 5 years ago, they're taking place now. Again, I feverishly took notes today, so There's great stuff going on here, and Wayne County is an amazing county. We have some great resources. The whole Rochester region, to Theo's point there. I mean, gosh, I got to tell you, I'm not sure there's any place in the world I'd rather live than right here, except maybe in certain days in February and January. But overall,
Get you in
I'll
the
tell you,
skiing, Mark.
it's right. If I was skiing, it'd be all right, but it doesn't get much better than where we are.
Mhm. Well, you said cog in the wheel. I like, maybe this comes from planning, tools in the tool belt is
There you go.
the analogy I like to think about. We're all, tools in the tool belt to help us all move forward. And again, I think, our responsibility here through the planning department is, or economic development is either identifying missing tools and going to the tool shed and grabbing them and getting them in the belt, or, bringing those tools to the table to help build the house or build the community. And Thomas has been very involved in a lot of that stuff. We have a lot of ongoing work here. Final thoughts, comments on any of all that, or?
No, I mean, I definitely, I want to kind of echo a lot of what the other panelists have said. They're great partners in all of this. We've also, just yesterday we were meeting with code enforcement on a different topic, but they're definitely giving us feedback of what they're seeing down on the streets. And we're working on various projects with Pastone, including farm worker housing replacement, and they're kind of the next phase for the program that George is directing things through to actually get the work done. So they're a great partner, and we're always open to trying to find those other partnerships, because as Brian said, we are not a housing agency, but we certainly want to be able to take feedback and try to find those resources so that we can be a convener for the future of the county. So appreciate you all.
We're at, I've got 10:02 here, and we're right up against it. It was a little over, but I appreciate everyone taking the time this morning. I think hopefully everyone gained a lot out of it, panelists, attendees. I know I did. I really appreciate these conversations. It helps either open up my mind or our thoughts to ideas and things that we could or should be doing. It helps, emphasize the fact that I think we're doing the right thing to an extent. There's always more to do, to George's point. It's not easy or short term, it's long term stuff here. But appreciate all the attendees, the panelists, and all the time this morning. We'll send out some emails on follow-up with links to websites and other resources, and to everybody who's in attendance and who registered for attending. Keep us in mind. We'll be doing more of these conversational panel type opportunities in the future. And I hope everyone enjoys a nice, beautiful sunny day in the greater Rochester region and their weekend. Thanks again very much.